The night city of high-rises was silent, but not all its inhabitants had gone to sleep. At that moment, there was fear in the eyes of the hero. He hated this cruel world. The boy's parents left him as soon as he was born. All his life, he was treated like an animal. Therefore, the young man had no reason to love this world. The hero long ago lost all trust in people. There was not a single person in the world who took his side. Years of cruelty to the guy made his heart hard, our stone. The hero could not count on anyone, had to always count on himself. The young man learned to defend himself on his own. Now he could stand alone against a pack of bandits. On January 1st, 20th, the world turned into a game. Dungeons began to appear everywhere around. Real monsters were coming out of there. Because of the destruction they were creating in the city, many people died. Along with the monsters, divine beings called Radiant began to appear. They shared their special powers with a small number of people. Only they could use these powers to destroy dungeons and turn into players. Ordinary people believed that players with magical powers would save the world. But the players took advantage of this chaos and were only busy satisfying their selfish goals. There was a lot of talk among the Earthlings that the end of the world was coming. But for the hero, this world remained a place where he trusted no one, at least until he met one man named Lee Jie-jun. This man was one of the first 7 players, standing at the origins of this guild. A warrior, a descendant of the sacred light, and the strongest player in the entire world. Lee unselfishly helped the weak by protecting them from monsters. A warrior didn't do it for money, but to save the world. Lee Si-jun was brave, strong, and uncompromising. He, as if a hero from the legend of King Arthur, drew his sword from the stone. No monster could escape the blonde man's sharp weapon. Lee was determined. He aimed to destroy the very last boss in this game. To put a stop to it was the hero's main desire. During their first meeting, Lee revealed that this was how he was going to save the world. This was the only person who deserved respect in the eyes of the hero. Once upon a time, the Messiah Guild was created by the first players. Brave knights who wanted to save the world gathered around Lee Se-jun one by one. This was the first time such a coalition of the strongest players had been created. They stood side by side against the monsters, cleansing the land of these monsters. The monsters fell one after another like underfoot. The giant trolls were incredibly strong opponents, but the warriors were stronger. For the first time in his life, the hero met people he could trust and rely on. It was a real family, which the guy never had. After the battle, the knights had fun with a bottle and funny stories by the fire. Then the young man decided that together they were a real force. The hero thought that becoming a member of the guild Messiah, he could change the world. One evening, left alone with Lee, he said to the chief, "The last battle remains." The great warrior thoughtfully repeated the last 2 words. Then he added, "Yes, perhaps it will indeed be the last," Lee Se-jun said in a strange tone. As the man called the hero by name, Kim Woo-jin felt a sense of danger and started to turn around. He managed to notice with the corner of his eye that the player drew his sword from its sheath. Everything happened lightning fast. Before the young man could even realize it, he was hit in the stomach. "You did well, Kim Woo-jin, and if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have been able to achieve all this," Lee Se-jun quietly spoke out. The strength left the hero and he fell to his knees, with the player's sword sticking out in his stomach. At that moment, Kim received a message from the system. "You are under the Balman curse. Resistance strength has been reduced by 90%. Defense has been reduced by 90%. Barely being able to speak, Kim Woo-jin muttered, "Has it really been from the beginning?" The hero realized that Lee had done all of this intentionally, but he didn't understand the reason. Suddenly, someone third came out of the shadows. He asked, "Why? Don't you still understand? When the game ends, everything will disappear. Our power, items, dungeons, monsters." It was a woman from their guild. She believed that when everything disappeared, the reason to honor them would also disappear. Park Shin-hye didn't care about Kim Woo-jin. She didn't want to lose her fame and influence. The woman moved closer to the hero's ear and quietly whispered that this way they wouldn't be able to take over the world. Drops of sweat appeared on the hero's face. The pain from the wound was unbearable. The 2 former friends stood over their victim. Park Shin-hye watched the hero's suffering with a smile. Kim Woo-jin was on his knees, looking at the ground. In the next moment, the young man screamed loudly. It was a scream full of despair. "Lee Se-jun!" The system reported that he had been poisoned by a snake. The hero twisted. Black liquid from his mouth splashed onto the ground. A puddle of steam billowed from the puddle. It signaled a high poison content. Park Shin-hye said, "Balman's curse only caused poisoning. You're really, really cool." She added with a smile, The thing is, the others just had enough poison to die. Kim was stunned by this news. It turns out he wasn't the first. The faces of all the other guild members appeared in his mind. The realization of the situation made him shake. He couldn't hold back any longer. Hiro hit his fist on the ground. It was a terrible disappointment because he believed them, wanted to save the world. And the so-called colleagues with whom he risked his life together decided to get him out of their way. Park Shin-hye confirmed the character's words and added that he is quick to pick up on everything. Dragonborn, Thunderstorm, and even the King of Immortals, John George, you've lost them all, Kim muttered with despair. The woman asked with a smile, don't we have the right to run this world as we wish? The young man hoped that Lee Si-jun, whom he trusted so much, would say something himself. Let him come up with an excuse for his shameful actions. But the head of the Messiah Guild wasn't going to explain anything. He turned around with his henchwoman and walked away. The hero was crushed and his trust was crushed again. He was only convinced once again that no one in this world could be trusted. Kim Woo-jin's strength had completely left him. That's how he died. Monsters began to appear very often, but because of this, the players were able to earn money. They constantly risked their lives and hoped that they would start getting more. A dark truck flew through the streets of the city at high speed. The hero was sitting in the luggage compartment next to the other guys. He had just come to his senses and didn't understand what the hell was going on here. Kim Woo-jin touched his own chest. The boy's last memory was of being stabbed. The young man made sure there were no wounds on his body. The only conclusion that could be drawn in this situation, the hero was dead. Kim looked around at the other people who were sitting nearby. Most of them also looked confused. The thought flashed through his mind that it was all just a dream. The truck continued its route at high speed. The driver was carefully watching the road as suddenly a grimace of surprise appeared on his face. Suddenly, the man hit the brakes sharply. The car began to skid to the right. The driver barely managed to control himself. He was literally stunned by what he saw ahead. Up ahead, right in the middle of the road, several cars were involved in an accident. It was all caused by giant green orcs. The driver tapped on the back of the cab and exclaimed, "There's a mob of orcs in front of us! Everyone to your weapons and out!" The soldiers didn't hesitate. They immediately jumped out of the trunk, holding their rifles at the ready. One of the orcs noticed the danger. He roared predatorily, warning the others. In the next instant, a mob of unstoppable monsters rushed at the soldiers. The driver looked terrified. He demanded that the warriors move faster. The men in the trunk were confused. They needed a leader. A man with a gray mustache exclaimed, "We are short of ammunition, so only pull the trigger when you're sure." At that moment, everyone present heard a gunshot. One of the orcs fell to the ground, blood flowing from his head. This marksman was Kim Woo-jin. The young man had not forgotten his combat experience from his past life. The orcs froze only for a second. The next moment, they rushed at their opponents again. The hero didn't let the monsters get any closer. He immediately opened fire. The young man was a really accurate sniper. 2 more orcs were shot. 2 empty shell casings fell at the feet of the guy. But he didn't have time to stop all the monsters. One of the monsters brought his hand holding a large club to strike. Kim Jin barely had time to bounce back. Another moment, and his life would also be over. The young man was used to trusting only himself. He took advantage of the situation and made a precise shot again. The attacker received 2 bullets in his chest. The other monster didn't have time to come to his aid. The hero managed to hit the monster while in the air, only now he reached the ground. The orc, in front of whose eyes a tribesman died, wanted revenge. The next moment, the monster rushed straight at Kim Woo-jin. But the guy's reaction was faster. In a second, a hole incompatible with life appeared in the orc's head. The people who were silently watching the scene couldn't believe their own eyes. The truck driver stunnedly muttered, "How is it even possible to do this on your own?" Meanwhile, the hero lowered his eyes while looking at his palm. Kim Woo-jin finally realized that this was all too real to be a dream. The young man turned around and walked towards the crowd of people. He was met by the man who was trying to run this operation. He angrily exclaimed, "Hey, you reckless fool! You want to kill them all?" The guy lowered his eyes. He was only now sure that this was not a dream. The man continued to shout, but in the hero's mind there was only one thought. "I've gone back in time. Answer when you're spoken to, scumbag," the gray-haired man continued to demand. The guys in the crowd were whispering. No one could figure out what was wrong with this strange young man. Kim didn't want to talk to anyone. He crouched down beside the truck and took a breath. The hero held his head. He recalled the last events of the past, before his death. Lee Se-jun, Park Shin-hye. It was all because of them they killed him. At that moment, a message from the system reached the hero's ears. Kim Woo-jin was congratulated on becoming a player. A window with information about his abilities unfolded in front of the young man's eyes. The system showed the halos that would help the new player. The hero remembered that this was the day he became a player. But compared to before, he now had 3 options to choose from on how to proceed. One of the halos had the title Representative of the Dark World. These roles gave the ability to control curses of different types. You can also use dead monsters as material to create a dark zombie army. Unlike other roles, this one endowed its owner with cheater abilities. Therefore, a single player could possess all of these skills. John George, the so-called King of Immortals, was the most powerful player who received the favor of the Dark World representative and all the abilities. While Lee Si-jun was considered a hero by everyone, George became a real monster to people. Kim Woo-jin wanted to find this monster. To do so, he analyzed and researched the halo of the representative of the Dark World. The hero smiled slyly. Now he would become this monster himself. He had an enduring desire for revenge against the man he once trusted and betrayed. The hunt begins. A guild is a commercial organization to bring players together. Out of all of them, only the Phoenix Guild had the ability to gain money and power by any means necessary. That was how it became the second guild in Korea. Against the backdrop of the corruption in the Phoenix Guild, the Messiah Guild looks even more perfect. The headquarters of the Phoenix Guild was in a high-rise building in the middle of the city. In one of the offices, a contract to join the Phoenix Guild was lying on the table. Each dungeon sweep incurs additional costs, the white-collar man told him. Kim perused the document. It wasn't enough to buy an item, but there was nothing to do. The hero asked how he could prove his qualifications as a player. The young man thought that the status window could only be seen by the player himself, and there was no way for others to see it. These words made the man with glasses smile and reach into the inside pocket of his jacket. The next moment, he placed some paper on the table. These are the unique skill pages of the representatives of the Dark World. Choose one of them and tear the paper. The man laid out 5 different options in front of the young man. If the hero is a player, he will be able to check everything with his own eyes. Kim couldn't believe his own eyes as he read the information on these cards. On one of them was written, Hemotoxin, blood poisoning. This card could only be purchased by a member of the Dark World of level 1 or higher. The effect of the skill turns the owner's blood into poison. The higher the rank of the skill and the level of the owner, the higher the defeatability of the poison becomes. The guy had no idea that he could get such a skill here. This skill turns blood into a potent poison that is difficult to resist. On its own, this skill is very simple, but with a blood golem, the effect increases, so the ability is quite useful. Kim didn't hesitate anymore. He reached out his hand for the right card. The hero tore the card. That's how he demonstrated his choice. At the same moment, the young man glowed lilac color. Something like a matrix was formed around him. The system reported the receipt of the skill Hemotoxin. Somewhere in the clearing, several warriors were engaged in a dialogue. Why was Woo-jin Oppa chosen as a seeker? Oppa in Korean culture is used as a woman's address to a man who is older than her. Women may use this address toward their older brother or friend, but most often toward a guy. The girl assumed that this role was not suitable for Woo-jin. One of the warriors quietly explained, because in the whole guild, his character is the worst. The man added, turning to the girl, stick around a little longer and you'll realize for yourself how unpleasant his character is. Suddenly, a young man who had been standing in front alerted the others that they were approaching. He seemed to be the senior in this troop and told the others to prepare for battle. It was a memory. Kim had died once, but they brought him back. He still has dreams from his past life. He went back in time, so the people from the memories are still alive. The hero wanted to meet them as soon as possible. He eventually found himself in the Gwanmun Sports Park. Some man standing near a red car asked if everyone had arrived early. A beautiful woman with long hair asked, "Today is our first hunt. We just have to trust Juso Papa, right?" The man in the white shirt said that this was the 4th hunt for him. He asked others to trust and follow him. The leader asked the others when the last participant would arrive. Suddenly, everyone present heard loud noises from the direction of the entrance that made them look around. At that moment, an old car entered the underground parking lot. The blonde-haired guy said, "This young man said that the hike isn't the first one for him, but it's so slow. A beginner needs to discipline himself." At that moment, a hero wearing sportswear and a hood on his head came out of the car. The girl added, "That's right. He should be grateful that he was allowed to join. What a terrible car. From the way the guy looks, I don't think he even got guild gear, said another of the people present. The team decided that the rookie on his first operation had decided to focus on survival. They decided it wasn't worth paying attention to the guy and set off. The head of this expedition offered to pretend like they were missing one member. He bragged that he had just acquired a new weapon. The hero stopped and silently observed the behavior of the insolent four. The brief dungeon briefing was over. The things the main man mentioned didn't matter. The main thing was to remember their goals and the conditions under which to fulfill them. The man who conducted the instruction asked everyone present to double-check everything again. Now was the time to ask questions or abandon the expedition. He wanted to make sure that all the members of this team were really prepared for such an adventure. Those present acted as if they had known each other for a long time. Kim alone felt uncomfortable because he didn't know anyone here. But on the other hand, he was glad that he didn't have to worry about strangers. Now it was every man for himself. The next moment the portal was activated, the adventure began. The girl exclaimed in amazement that she was seeing the portal so close for the first time. The team leader said they would be even more surprised when they got inside. The beautiful girl boldly took a step forward and disappeared into the portal. Kim Woo-jin was the last person who hadn't gone through the portal yet. It appeared that the passage into the dungeon was changing people's appearance. The girl opened her mouth in surprise at seeing another world. All 5 of them found themselves in a sunny clearing in the middle of the forest. The blonde man said to the others, "It feels like I've gotten into a game." The group commander assured the others that this was reality. He advised everyone to stay on guard. Everyone has only one life. Meanwhile, the hero wasted no time. He noticed footprints on the nearby trees and realized that there were many goblins here. Suddenly, the young man heard a voice behind his back. "Kim Woo-jin, is that your name?" The head of the group asked the hero to look around while they set up camp. Kim agreed to such a suggestion without too much talk. The young man turned around and went deeper into the forest to explore. One of the team said with a smile, looking after the newcomer, "I thought he'd be clingy, but he's so easy." The blonde man continued to sneer. He thought Kim was an idiot who didn't realize the level of danger around him. The group commander motioned for the others to get ready for the hunt. He believed that all the items they received would now be theirs. Meanwhile, Kim of course realized that he was going to be used as bait. The hero smiled slyly. Everything happened just as he expected. The moon lit up the city against the backdrop of the high-rise building that housed the guild office. Meanwhile, there was some sort of meeting going on inside. A beautiful woman with red hair said that everyone was already here. She was going to introduce a new member for this mission to everyone present. The man, whose face was exposed by scars, was surprised by her words. Suddenly, the door opened and everyone saw a dark figure. Yan Ji-hoo, a member of the Messiah Guild, immediately formed an impression of the new member. He decided that he was too arrogant. Meanwhile, the newcomer said while addressing the people present, "Nice to meet you. My name is Suzuki Aiki." He added that there were a lot of familiar faces around, so it was okay not to introduce himself. Guild Chairman Messiah Lee Siejun named himself and his position, and added that it was nice to meet him as well. The newcomer was impatient. He wants to get an assignment right away. Suddenly, the silence of the hall was cut through by a hand hitting the table. Jan jumped to his feet. He could not endure such insolence of the newcomer. How dare he speak to the head of the mission in such a tone? Master Archer Noda Haidaro and Master Swordsman Sukahara Ken wanted to know why they had called this bastard. The newcomer couldn't understand why those present were reacting to him like that. He assumed they were mad. "Are you annoyed by my intonation? Is it because of last time?" Suzuki Aichi inquired in surprise. The man wanted to know if the people present still had residue. Kim Ji-hoon exclaimed, "What did you say? Scoundrel, you're screwed today!" The guild chairman was fed up with this scene and ordered everyone to stop. His cold blue eyes looked stern. Lee Siejun was feared, so he didn't argue. Young Ji-hoo sat silently at the table, his anger choking him, but he didn't dare to argue with the guild chairman. The man decided that he would soon beat the arrogance out of this bastard. The red-haired girl beckoned to everyone to finish with greetings. Park Shin-hai said, "The job that was specified earlier, how much longer do we have to wait?" The newcomer remained silent as he continued to twirl some object in his hands. Finally, he said, "If it's just about finding the location of the material, I need 3 days." Lee Siejun thought that 3 days, that wasn't bad. Meanwhile, some strange sounds were heard in the middle of the forest. Many trees showed deep scratches from 3 claws. Kim Woo-jin continued to conduct his reconnaissance. He came to the conclusion that the rumors about this dungeon were not false. It was even funny to the hero now. This type of reconnaissance and fighting style had taught him all of this. Every trail carries information, and it will help to survive in the dungeon. The hero remembered this advice well from the past. He was in agreement that information was important, but in order to survive, you still need to become stronger. The person from the past then objected, "No matter how strong you are, you will always have a weakness." It was none other than Suzuki Aichi. Kim thought this warrior's words would be a lesson to him, but he turned out to be for the Messiah. Suzuki had not only killed for the guild, he had also become a loyal puppy for them. But now, that knowledge would turn out to be a knife in his back. Suddenly, the hero heard some kind of whistling. Something was flying in his direction. The young man barely had time to dodge, and the pebble hit the trunk of the tree, near which Kim was standing. They were goblins. There were 3 of them. The presence of the monsters didn't scare the boy at all. He didn't waste time and activated the system window. The next moment, a sharp dagger appeared in Kim Woo-jin's hands. The hero remembered if something long ago hiding from the goblins on the 7th floor of the dungeon, but now they were just targets for his geotoxin. Kim Woo-jin boldly looked into the eyes of danger. He didn't move as the monster ran at him. The goblin was already very close. The young man could smell the nasty odor from its open mouth. The boy took a step to the side, letting the monster run forward. Then, with a decisive movement, he struck a precise blow. The blade of the knife stabbed into the goblin's left arm. The hero knew well that goblins were vulnerable to blood poisoning. Judging from the way the monster's face twisted, she was also aware of it. The young man managed to dodge the club that almost hit him in the head. Kim Woo-jin thought, "It's poisoned, but it's still moving. I guess the poison isn't that potent." At this moment, another goblin intervened in the fight. He kicked at the spot where the hero stood a second ago. The young man couldn't reach the target, so he threw a dagger at the goblin. The weapon hit the target. The dagger went straight into the monster's head. The wounded goblin was dumbfounded by the death of his comrade. "The goblin's strategy isn't hard to predict, so I can deal with these scum easily," the young man thought with a smile. If he took a little more time, the number of monsters would start to increase. It was worth it to finish them off soon. The young man activated the system window again to get another weapon. This time, the hero's choice fell on a long whip. With this choice of weapon, he would be able to keep the goblins from getting close to him. Kim activated the Goblin King's whip effect. Fear appeared in the eyes of the monsters. The young man was pleased with his foresight. It was good that he had taken care of the whip well in advance. This weapon has a unique rank and instills incredible fear in the goblins. It increases the standard battle damage by 10% while attacking. While attacking goblins, it increases the damage against goblins by 30%. Meanwhile, the other 4 team members were quietly advancing through the forest. Somewhere in the distance, the trees could be heard bowing under the onslaught of the wind. The only woman in the group looked back first. In the next moment, her face went from calm to frightened, and her eyes went wide. The team saw 6 enraged goblins approaching quickly. The girl was the last one standing, so the first blow came at her. The beauty closed her eyes in horror. A second later, she felt something hot splash on her face. Not feeling the pain, the beauty decided to open her eyes to see what happened. It turned out that the girl was protected by the chairman and the group. The man exclaimed, "What are you doing? You don't need to be afraid of ordinary goblins." Tears appeared in the girl's eyes. The only thing she could utter was the name of her savior. The other team members were also chanting the name of their team leader, Ju Seop-hyun. The man said, turning to the girl, "Come on, focus. You don't need to be afraid of those squishies." He thought how good it was that he had prepared a long sword beforehand. The head of the group was sure that the goblins were just meatbags. While the man was thinking about all this, he got a little distracted. His sword was still in the goblin's body as he felt a strange pain. It turned out that the other monster had managed to hit the man from behind with a club on his head. Ju Sop-hen lost his balance and flew to the ground. The other 3 team members froze in place. They looked scared, so they were in no hurry to act. The commander was in a lot of pain. He was drinking his teeth from the fortress to keep from screaming. The goblins started pulling his legs. Ju Sop-hyun was begging for help. He closed in despair. "Why are you frozen and staring, you idiots?" Ju's shout finally brought his comrades out of their stupor. The 2 boys rushed forward, charging at the goblins. The forest became noisy, the sounds of battle echoing in all directions. The first goblin flew to the ground, receiving a kick to the body. The monster flew to the ground, blood spurting from his body in all directions. The rest of the goblins shook with terror. They were in no hurry to rush at the enemy. Kim Woo-jin was satisfied with the effect of his whip. He watched the goblin's reactions with a smile. The monster that had not yet experienced the effects of the hero's magic weapon was trying to escape. The others were lying motionless on the ground. But the young man was not going to leave anyone alive. His whip caught up with the last goblin. The whip wrapped around the monster's neck. It had no room to breathe. The hero tightened his lash. Saliva flowed from the goblin's mouth. The creature collapsed onto the cradle, the air rapidly disappearing from its lungs. In the same instant, the system reported that the young man had passed this level. A representative of the dark world is interested in you. Achievement attracting attention has been obtained, Kim Woo-jin heard. The young man smiled and said, "They're weaker than I thought." Behind his back, a mountain of slain goblins remained in the forest clearing. The hero looked at his whip and said, "Only fools swing heavy swords. The Goblin King's whip is enough." He decided that he had enough time to waste here. Meanwhile, in another clearing, 4 warriors were struggling to fend off an onslaught from another group of goblins. One of the men asked the others what they thought had happened to the newcomer. Do Sop Hen suggested that he was probably dead, as there was still no news from him. The men began to quarrel, one of them shouting, "What the hell? It would have been better if we had someone else with us. I did as you said. What is it?" The girl sat silent. She was trembling. The 3 members of this expedition were blaming their leader for what had happened. The next moment, they all jumped to their feet upon hearing suspicious sounds from the forest. The whole team heard what was happening to their newcomer in another clearing among those thickets. The hero received another message from the system that he had gained the skeleton warrior skill. The young man immediately activated the help, wanting to know the details of his new skill. An interactive book with information about the skeleton warrior skill appeared in front of his eyes. Kim couldn't believe his own eyes that he had already, so quickly, acquired this skill. He remembered John George, the immortal king, who could control an army of the dead with his own hands. This skill was one of the strongest in his arsenal, but on the other hand, it wasn't perfect. Its flaw proved fatal to its possessor. Only monsters destroyed directly by the caster's hands could be sacrificed. There were a large number of rules and limitations to such situations. The system made the hero realize that it was not easy to possess any skill. The young man tore the paper to activate a new skill. He decided that this way he could save some time. The skeleton warrior skill was now activated. Kim can use the enemy's body to summon a skeleton soldier, but only once. The hero decided that this way it would be easier for him to distract the enemy and hunt well. He decided to test this skill right away and approached the body of the slain goblin. The young man stretched out his hand. Real magic was happening before his eyes. He managed to draw white energy from the corpse. Kim watched with interest as the monster's skin disappeared before his eyes. In just a moment, only bones remained of the goblin. The hero waited, holding his breath for the skeleton to start moving. Finally, he noticed how the bones, which had recently been the fingers of the creature's hands, began to move. The boy looked thoughtful as he watched the skeleton rise to its feet. The hero's mind flashed, "I like the glint in this guy's eyes." Kim Woo-jin decided to test his warrior right away. It didn't take long for the goblins to arrive, so pretty soon the young man saw the skeleton in action. The young man thought about it. It turned out that his zombie warrior was not as strong as he expected. The hero decided that the indicators of magical power in it were too low. Something needed to be done about it. Kim walked over and looked into the skeleton's empty eyes. He realized that it would be quite difficult to use this warrior as a primary weapon. Suddenly, the hero's gaze came across something strange. "Wait, is this what I think it is?" The guy saw a startling picture. The remains of the players, their rotting bodies hanging from a tree like marionettes. One similarity between all wizards, from the weakest goblins to the strongest dragons, is the desire to hurt people. Unfortunately, most newcomers don't take that into consideration, thought the young man. He decided that in that case there was no reason to be merciful to these monsters. Night quickly descended on the forest. 4 of Kim Woo-jin's teammates were sitting in the clearing by the fire. Ju Seop-hyun was crushed that they were just goblins and they couldn't handle them. The girl was crying quietly, hiding her face under the wide brim of her hat. Archer asked Ju what they should do now. The young man added that they had completely underestimated this dungeon. The head of the expedition continued to complain that he couldn't die like this. The next moment, the man angrily added that he wouldn't bow down to that damn goblin. Ju jumped to his feet and shouted furiously, "We can't die here!" The entire trio looked at their commander hopefully. They hoped the man had a plan. "What's wrong with you guys? It's been difficult, but we can still make it if we try. Ju Sop-hyun shouted. The hooded young man said that wasn't what he meant at all and pointed his finger somewhere. The captain didn't understand what he meant. The boy held his head up. He said there was something strange above Ju's head. The men finally looked up and saw an inscription from the system. Upgrade. He didn't realize what was the point since he wasn't even in combat right now. You only level up when someone on the team keeps fighting. He finally remembered the captain's rules. It was at that moment that the man realized that the rookie was still alive. Kim Woo-jin and his skeleton warrior didn't stop even at night. He illuminated everything around him with a torch. From experience, an effective way to kill a crowd of goblins is to use magic aid, muttered the hero. He thought of something to get rid of the monsters quickly and almost without a trace. He shifted his burning torch from one hand to the other. The entrance to the cave was lined with a pile of tree trunks. All that was left was to light a huge fire. Kim Woo-jin and the skeleton watched the explosion that erupted after the wood was set on fire. The bonfire was gigantic, a column of black smoke rising high into the sky. It was only at this moment that the goblins realized they were trapped. Smoke billowed inside the cave. The monsters started coughing and grabbing their throats. The air inside became poisonous. One of the goblins was the first to notice the black smoke billowing inward from the exit. The others decided that this was the only way to escape, to get through the fire. The monsters decided not to delay and immediately rushed towards the exit. The hero was still standing, watching the dancing of the flames. Suddenly, he saw the trunks of the burning trees begin to shudder. The hero took a closer look at the fire. What he saw stunned him. An incredible thirst for life was inherent not only in humans, but also in monsters. Goblins were trying to break through the wooden bars. Dozens of green hands were trying to reach the young man. Kim smiled. Let's at least bury the dead players with you. The hero was sure that the monsters wouldn't be able to break through the bonfire. They would be flaming alive. The bonfire was of such power and size that it lit up the entire forest. When it was finished, Kim Woo-jin received a message from the system. Representative of the Dark World is pleased with your cruelty. The hero thought that was rather strange. He was counting on something different. He thought it would help to see at least the face of this representative. The guy walked away from the cave. He felt uneasy. Maybe he was hiding somewhere. The skeleton was about to follow his master, as suddenly some noise was heard from the direction of the ashes. The mystical warrior looked around and saw a giant goblin rising from the ground. It froze in place, staring fearfully at the giant with its empty eye sockets. The creature growled, its giant fangs snapping loudly. Kim Woo-jin was happy about this turn of events because he was getting tired of this place. The hero muttered, "Thank you so much for not having to look for you." This giant monster was very scary. The goblin boss's eyes were burning with fire. The young man was not at all intimidated by the sight of this monster. Until the Messiah Guild intervened in this matter, millions of newcomers had died in this dungeon, all because of this monster. In a level 1 goblin dungeon, meeting the hidden goblin king was equal to meeting death, but the hero intended to stop it. Drawing his sword, the young man said, "I will not let this monster continue to take lives." The skeleton was startled by the appearance of this sword in the hands of its lord. The pile of bones took a few steps forward, away from this weapon. Kim Woo-jin noticed this. He was interested in the skeleton's strange behavior. He asked his assistant, "Are you really that eager to fight?" The creature froze for a moment, then looked back at its master with fear. The young man muttered, "Look at him." The skeleton's gaze even changed. Did the strength to resist appear? The hero folded his arms on his chest and took a few steps back and leaned his back against the tree. The skeleton took the dream from his master's hands and came closer to the giant goblin. The creature looked at its opponent with a predatory smile, a sight that did not intimidate at all. Kim's subordinate pushed himself off the ground and ran towards the danger. The monster roared. It tried to crush the pile of bones, but the skeleton was faster. Once behind the goblin, the warrior struck at the tendons of the monster's legs. The hero watched the skeleton's actions with interest. He did not expect such a leap from him. It was difficult for humans to resist monsters of gigantic stature. Kim Woo-jin had already gone through something like this in his past life. Back then, he had advised the confused people to attack the giant monster's legs. "If we knock it down, there will be a better chance of victory," the hero once said. His determined look and the firmness of his voice gave hope to the confused crowd. The young man decided to show how to act and was the first to rush to the dragon's feet. He moved as fast as lightning, striking the monster's legs time after time. It was now that Kim remembered those events. The skeleton's movements exactly resembled his own. After the leg attack, the goblin fell to its knees, now much lower. The magical warrior knew what to do. He attacked the monster again and again. The hero continued to just watch. He wasn't going to interfere unnecessarily. The guy couldn't believe his own eyes. This fighting style he could recognize from hundreds. It was his own style. This was the strength of the servant skeleton. It utilizes its master's skills. Kim knew that his strength would affect the skeleton, but he couldn't assume that the skeleton would copy his own style. Before I went back in time, I could wield any weapon. Even in the guild, there were only a few people who could stand up to me one-on-one, the young man muttered. The skeleton looked at his master, awaiting his decision. At this rate, I will need to rethink my plan. The hero decided. The young man activated the system window. He still had questions. He read the message. A representative of the Dark World appreciates your accomplishments and is sending you a legendary skill page as a reward for your efforts. Legendary skill page. Tier literally translates to tier, often used to refer to a certain level of gradation. Kim Woo-jin smiled. He hadn't expected to receive such a bonus here. Meanwhile, somewhere on the surface, people heard a shout somewhere. The dungeon has been cleared. A man in a suit and glasses was stunned by this news. He rushed outside, eager to find out what had happened. A crowd had gathered near the active portal. People saw 4 figures coming out of there. The players had returned. Ju Seop-hyun was walking while leaning on another team member. The man with glasses couldn't believe that the dungeon had already been cleared. After all, it had only been one day. How could this be? The team coordinator was glad that everyone made it back alive. He ran to the ambulance. When he got closer, he saw that there were only 4 players. He wanted to know where Mr. Kim Woo-jin was. All of the newcomers were silent with their gazes down. Sweat appeared on the coordinator's face. He had decided that the newcomer had died. Suddenly, everyone present turned towards the portal. It opened again and Kim Woo-jin appeared. The coordinator couldn't believe his own eyes, how this newcomer had managed to escape. The hero had no desire to talk to anyone. He went straight away. Not wanting to explain anything to anyone, the young man heard shouts behind his back. They were asking him to stop. Ju Seop-hyun exclaimed, "Just as I thought, he survived that rascal. What kind of dirty tricks did he use to sweep the dungeon?" The man looked furious, his eyes glittering furiously. He kept his gaze fixed on Kim Woo-jin. The captain wanted to know who this young man really was. All over the news, they were saying, all over the world, the greed of players is increasing day by day. According to the analysis, dungeons can only be cleared by players, then they are trying to abuse their powers. But even so, the Korean Messiah Guild cleared a 5-story dungeon without much effort. On another channel, the host revealed that Lee Si-jun had saved the world again. After successfully clearing the 5-story dungeon, the guild's sponsor Han Seong Corporation recorded a sharp rise in its stock price. Jo Seop-hyun was only angered by this information. Damn Messiah scum! The man forcefully put the phone down on the table. He was annoyed that all the news was only about the players of the rival team. They make us look like scumbags who only do everything for money, Ju said with despair in his voice. His interlocutor advised him to forget it, because it wasn't the first time they had been through this. He wanted to hear what happened in the dungeon firsthand. Don't talk about it, that Kim Woo-jin. He almost got us killed, Ju said. But the stranger from the bar wasn't going to stop. He wanted to know what happened. The head of the expedition pointed his finger at his bandaged head. He explained that it was all because of that newcomer. The blond man said interestedly, "That means the rumors don't lie." "Yeah, that rookie joined. He was so eager to get the newbie items that he even ran into a crowd of goblins." Covering his face with his hand, Ju Seop-hyun muttered. He presented his story from a completely different perspective. The man claimed that he ran after the newcomer to save him, so he was injured. The interlocutor asked why the guild wouldn't punish the rascal. Forget about it. It felt like stepping in shit. He really needed that money with him. No matter how much money is needed, it's wrong. I'll talk to my friend so he can't repeat something like that anywhere else, replied the head of the expedition. Meanwhile, the hero analyzed the information. He gathered everything he knew from his past life on one board. I don't have to meet Lee Xie-jun like I did before. I have to become stronger for him to be interested in me, Kim Woo-jin said to himself. The hero was confident that he would succeed in getting revenge on his killers. He will put this plan into action. Right now, he needed to start from the most forgotten corner of Lee Si-jun's life. The next day, the young man went to the guild headquarters. He wanted to go on an expedition to the Orc Hunter dungeon. The coordinator replied, No, if you're trying to destroy the rumors that are going around the guild and trying to solve everything now. Kim was surprised at those words. He hadn't heard any rumors, he just needed some money. The other man who was also present in this office kept his gaze on the guy. He inquired if it was really about money. Kim Woo-jin, life is priceless. Money is important too, but aren't you worried about your own life? He asked. The man offered to lend money, but the hero refused. Kim asked just to set a date. He would do the rest himself. The young man thought, these unpleasant rumors are like a welcome gift for me. A good argument to go alone. When the hero left the office, the coordinator told the other that the rumors about this guy weren't true. The one replied, rumors are rumors, but he doesn't even know his place. Anyway, what's the status of the dungeon he wants to go to? The coordinator replied that a group of Jongyeon-gu had recently gone there, where they were destroyed. Since then, no one had applied for a whole month. The man with glasses asked who Jongyeon-gu was. He received the answer, a new star from Park Eun-won's group. The supervisor watched through the window as the hero approached his car. He's trying to enter the dungeon that Park Yong-won's specialist couldn't pull off. The man was sure this brash newcomer wouldn't last long. The bespectacled man decided that they should support him, just in case. Kim Woo-jin decided in order to kill the hero, he needed to be friends with the bad guys, like Park Yoon-won. The young man decided not to waste time and went to a dangerous area of the city. Only the hero's yellow car stopped and he went outside, as he felt that someone was calling him. A man in a suit was rapidly approaching the guy. The man was shocked that the young man actually came alone. He figured the guy just couldn't find partners because of his greed for money. The man offered to go straight to the dungeon. He pointed the hero in the right direction. Crazy. Is he really going to go alone? And yet, why do I care? It's none of my business whether he dies or not, was in the mind of the keeper of the dungeon entrance. After a moment, Kim saw the entrance in the distance. It seemed to glow in the darkness. The hero moved closer and activated the system window. The Orc Hunter dungeon has 1 floor and a difficulty of C rank. The maximum number of players is 3. The exit conditions are level 13 or lower. The young man realized that clearing the dungeon was impossible according to his level. If he went alone. Kim Woo-jin drew his sword. He decided if he could use the orc as a skeleton warrior, things would change. The very next moment, a giant orc appeared behind the boy with a weapon in his hands. The young man had time to react lightning fast. He assessed the situation in a matter of seconds. Avoiding the enemy's blow, he jumped through the monster's legs. Leaning on his own arm, it took him a moment to regain his balance. Using his crowning blow, the hero attacked the orc's legs. The wounds his sword left surprised the guy. It's a normal orc, but his skin is tougher. My attack only left a small scratch. Meanwhile, the monster was trying to pull the weapon out of the ground, which had gotten there from the force of the blow after the failed attack. The guy smiled. With this kind of strength, I'll die from a single blow, right? If only he could kill this monster and summon it as a skeleton warrior. Then he would have a chance to mop up the dungeon on his own. The guy gathered all his strength to put this plan into action. Despite its gigantic size, the monster was fast. It attacked the hero again. The young man managed to bounce away and the orc's mace hit the ground again. The stone that flew into the air from the impact scratched Kim's cheek. The hero was behind him again. He had another chance to attack again. The boy decided he needed to hit that very spot. The second scratch was deeper, but still couldn't hurt the animal. Kim Woo-jin struck again and again, trying to pierce the orc's thick skin. The monster roared wildly, all of its legs covered in wounds that ached. Having done his job, the guy bounced farther away, waiting for the result. Since the skin was tough, the monster didn't immediately realize how much time he had to suffer. But in the next second, blood spurted in different directions from the numerous wounds on the creature's legs. The orc could no longer stand and fell to his knees. He was now a legless predator. Saliva dripped from the monster's ravenous mouth onto the ground. It tried to reach the young man, but due to the sharp pain, it could not budge. The young man drew his sword to strike. The orc was no longer scary. One last blow and the ground around him turned red. Now it's just a matter of time. The skeleton warrior is summoned. While the hero was in the dungeon, there was one encounter in the city. 2 men were sitting in a room across from each other, talking about something. One of them was looking into some kind of folder. He said that this thing was quite interesting. The blond man couldn't help himself and asked irritably, "What are you studying there for so long? Don't tell me you're trying to pick out some weird item for your business again?" The man smiled and placed the papers on the table. advising his interlocutor to take a look if he was so interested. The young man lowered his gaze to the papers and began to read. It was some kind of questionnaire with Kim Woo-jin's picture on it. A newcomer who recently awakened cleaned up the dungeon on his own, the boy read. It said that he's now entered the second cave, and this time he is alone from the beginning. He's a wicked man who just got his powers, the other said. The blonde thought that this simply couldn't be the case, for even he felt the difficulty at the beginning. You're not saying you trust some piece of paper from an unknown source, are you? He asked his comrade. He didn't think Hanim was so naive. Suddenly, a woman in high heels entered the room. She was carrying several cups of drinks on a tray. The girl inquired, "Is there a problem with my report?" The blonde man was shocked that this report was provided by Secretary Lee. The young man exclaimed that this report seemed perfect to him. He wanted to know how the woman had gotten such accurate information. It was a strange change in behavior. Was he really afraid of her? The secretary set down the tray and confirmed that it was indeed her job. Hanim confidently said that this information was 100% accurate precisely because it was collected by Lee. The man believed that if they couldn't trust Secretary Lee, then who to believe at all? In the next moment, Heng's mood changed drastically. He shouted while pointing at the stacks of coffee, "Instant coffee, I hate it! I told you not to buy that stuff." He wanted to know why Secretary Lee had bought it. The woman silently drank from the cup and did not react in any way to the supervisor's claims. After a moment, the woman replied, "This coffee was left over from the meeting with the Phoenix Guild that was last week, and this report was prepared on the back of used paper." The chief's mood changed again. "Ah, how delicious! The best coffee is instant." Now the man was glowing with kindness. If we can't trust Secretary Lee, who can we trust in this world at all? This behavior of Heng's annoyed the blonde man. He stared at his comrade in silence. Everything was written on his face. The next moment, the chief asked his secretary how things were going with the purchase of the dungeon. The woman replied that there were a few good offers, but the price was too high, so she kept looking. "Hanim, aren't there any dungeons left from the ones you bought recently?" the blonde asked. The one didn't understand what the comrade meant. If he started going into dungeons, they wouldn't have enough of them. "I beg your pardon, what are you implying? I just got back from the dungeons yesterday. Don't I deserve some rest?" the blonde exclaimed in despair. Hanim replied, "If a person rested often, he would quickly become lazy. Workaholics like the blonde man are prone to disease." The chief thought he was doing it for his own good. Secretary Lee listened to this conversation but didn't comment on anything. Time to return to the main character and his adventures in the Orc Hunter dungeon. The skeleton warrior worked for his master, but one day he had bad luck and the skull ended up on the ground, his mission over. The hero saw it all. He decided that due to his low level, the resilience skill was rather weak. The hero jumped off the body of the slain orc on the ground. An idea was born in his head. "John George, the king of immortals that I fought in my past life, told me one thing," Kim said to himself. The young man reached out to the monster's dead body and activated his skill. He created a new skeleton warrior. The orcs looked dumbfounded. The guy's eyes glowed with magical fire as he carefully watched the skeleton get out, tearing muscles and skin. The head was stripped of all excess. It was now a bare skull with sharp teeth. This warrior was much bigger and stronger than all the previous ones. "As long as my magic power allows, I will create new skeleton warriors." Kim Woo-jin spoke decisively. The hero looked around the battlefield. There were plenty of casualties here. The skeleton was crushing orcs left and right. 2 of them froze in place. They were trying to decide whether to continue the battle or whether it was better to run away. After a while, the young man received several messages from the system. His level had increased. All skill points increased. The blood poisoning skill had reached the 2nd level. Kim was disappointed. He realized that trying to increase his level in this dungeon would be difficult. He should leave the regular orcs behind and find an orc hunter instead. As a creature that hunts alone, he thought that one would control the pack. But now it was clear that the hunter didn't hang out with the group. There was only one place left where he could be. Suddenly, the young man's attention was caught by a skeleton warrior who started acting strangely. Kim Woo-jin assumed that the pile of bones knew something. That's why it was watching so intently. The hero pushed those thoughts away from him. He needs to find the place where the hunter is hiding as soon as possible. If he's in that place, there won't be any useful monsters there that the guy can use as sacrifices. The only useful one would be the skeleton warrior. The young man touched the skull with the wand he had just drawn on the ground. The skeleton obediently followed the hero. The one decided that there was still time to come up with something better. The scenery in this dungeon looked gloomy. Everywhere one could see bare bones on which crows were sitting. Suddenly, a ferocious roaring sounded far around. The sound startled the crows, who took to the sky, dropping their feathers. Something strange was happening in this god-forsaken corner of the dungeon. One orc was pulling another orc behind him, holding him by the head. The latter was almost unconscious with blood on his face. Behind the two of them, a trail of blood stretched across the ground. The orc's eyes burned with red fire. The next sight stunned even Kim Woo-jin, who had seen a lot of things. The orc sat with its back to the young man and dined, tearing into the red meat with its sharp teeth. The hero hid behind a rock and watched the meal. The young man thought, "It makes sense that the dungeon boss is stronger than the others." Kim made the right conclusion. It was foolish to engage him without training. But he could pierce the orc's body with an arrow with poisoned blood on the end. The hero looked at the skeleton. He wordlessly commanded him to act. The obedient warrior stepped out from behind the rock, holding his sword. The dungeon boss sensed the danger in his back and looked back. The monster roared predatorily. No one likes to be disturbed from their dinner. Despite its gigantic size, the orc moved very fast. He immediately rushed to attack the uninvited guest. The skeleton warrior didn't hesitate. He ran towards his opponent. The skeleton swung around, about to strike the orc with his giant sword. The two opponents met on the battlefield. The blow was incredibly powerful. The orc's red eyes were full of anger. He didn't waste any time and took the opportunity to sink his fangs into the skeleton's bone. "You can tell from his blood-red eyes that he is that orc hunter," flashed through the hero's mind. The young man aimed straight at the monster. He needed to hit a vulnerable area, not the thick skin. Kim decided that the ogre had a single weak spot. He only got one shot at it. The arrow approached quickly while the orc hunter's attention was fixed on the skeleton. But at the last moment, the monster saw the enemy weapon that was very close by. The only vulnerable point on the monster's body was the eyes. That's where the hero aimed. The arrow hit the target. The orc began to fall on his back. But at the last moment, he was able to regain his balance and stay on his feet. The hunter was really incredibly strong. Even the arrow in his eye did not stop him. He grasped its shaft, intending to pull it out of his head. In the next instant, the arrow with poisoned blood flew to the ground. Steam came out of the orc's mouth. Hot blood ran down his face. The system reported that the poison had affected the monster. The weaker the point of impact, the faster the poison spread through the body. The hero looked into the creature's only surviving eye. Thanks to the poison blood skill, the orc's health will gradually decrease, the system reported. The hunter began to lose his balance. He was already barely able to stay on his feet. The second level of this skill does not increase the chance of death, but this effect will be enough. Now it was time for the skeleton warrior to finish his job. This monster was finished. In the next second, the monster was indeed finished. The skeleton warrior had completed its task. Subsequently, the young man received a message from the system that he had destroyed the orc hunter and cleared the dungeon. His level had increased and he could return in 1 hour. Looking at the hero's lump of bones, he muttered, "It seems he ate everything in his path." Kim Woo-jin wondered if he had this guy, a member of Pan Eun-won's group, inside him. The young man scrutinized the skulls and bones, hoping to see something interesting. What caught his attention was a skeleton with a strange bone injury. There was a deep cut on the ribs that literally cut them in half. Kim was sure that this injury was not caused by an orc. From the looks of it, we can tell that the man was attacked from behind. It was someone who was used to killing in dungeons, thought the guy. It wasn't clear yet if it was a premeditated killing or not. But if they are members of Park Eun-won's group in the Phoenix Guild, then basically, because of the money and items, someone could even commit murder. The hero exhaled very deeply. He didn't have much time left in this dungeon. How would he have time to find traces of this guy? The young man continued to ponder on this matter. It would be good if it would help Kim Woo-jin get closer to Park Eun-won. The hero covered his face with his hands because he was suddenly blinded by a bright light. It turned out that very close by was a cave where something shone. The young man bent down and looked inside. He saw that only one person could pass through there. The next moment, the boy saw something impressive. In a recess of the rock sat a skeleton in armor who held a sword in his hand. Kim noticed that the weapon was surprisingly clean and the skeleton was not as damaged as the others. While this skeleton's comrades were dying, he ran away and counted the days until he died. The young man noticed the Phoenix Guild insignia on the skeleton's cloak. He decided that this act was well worthy of such a grouping, especially if it was the new star of Park Eun-won's group, the hero thought with a smile. There's no more appropriate place in the world for such a person's grave than here, Kim said, reading the inscription on the emblem, Young YG. The boy bent down, at which point something fell out of the bones onto the ground. He tried to examine what other secrets Young YG's skeleton was hiding. The hero reached out and picked up his find. It was a notebook of some sort, a diary of sorts. The guy opened it and ran his eyes over the smooth lines. After flipping through a few pages, he decided that it was unlikely to hide anything important. But just a second later, his eyes stopped on a page that caught his interest. Kim Woo-jin was literally dumbfounded by his discovery. In his hands was the blacklist of Park Yoon-won's group. After closing the notebook, he smilingly said, "I'm in luck. I'll find a great use for this diary." The representative of the Dark World congratulates you on your incredible achievement and sends you a legendary skill page as a gift, came a message from the system. Kim Woo-jin couldn't be happy about his achievement and discovery in this dungeon. The new skill was called Eye of Anubis. It allowed him to look into the past of the dead. This opportunity will be very useful in the new adventures of the hero. He decided not to hesitate and immediately tore the page with the skill. Whatever failures haunted him in his past life, now everything changed. The young man received the legendary Air achievement. It was said that the dead couldn't speak. But for Kim Woo-jin, things are different now. The guy decided to use his new skill and reached out his hands to the skull of the Phoenix Guild representative. He touched what used to be his head with both hands. The hero's eyes suddenly turned blue. Now, as an Egyptian god of the underworld, he could look into the past of the dead. Deep within the celestial blue color of the guy's eyes, black energy appeared. This meant only one thing. Anubis's eye had been activated. In the next instant, a powerful blue-black energy beam connected the eyes of the two people, the living and the dead. The skeleton warrior was still waiting for his master at the entrance to the cave. He saw a bright flash. "Those damn orcs! Help, Engu! Oh shit!" The hero saw images of memories for the dead man. He saw how the real skeleton had left his comrades for certain death and hid in the cave. Once the man was in hiding, he clutched his head, repeating over and over, "I can't die. Hunting people is a crime. But it's okay as long as he's with him." Another batch of memories from the Phoenix Guild members. "Are you really talking about someone who will one day become the head of the Phoenix Guild?" The hero then saw a chair where a man was sitting. His face couldn't be seen, but Kim knew for sure. He could see Park Yoon-won. The energy beam that was coming from the hero's eye turned almost black. The mana was so powerful that it was literally sucking out the guy's energy. Anubis's eye is a useful but difficult skill. Its magic requires a lot of strength. The young man saw everything he needed to see. The dead man's skull fell to the floor. Kim cradled his face, covering his eyes with his hand. He seemed to be in unbearable pain. The hero was amazed that he had just seen the dead man's memories. It seems this unfortunate person had an agonizing past. "I've spent more magical power than I'd like," thought the boy. His preparations were now complete. If he used this information and the list he had found, he would get closer to his goal. It didn't matter to the guy at all, thanks to the carefulness N1 could be. Meanwhile, behind the high fence, blood was dripping from some man's fists. Another was lying on the floor and didn't move. That first one said in fury, "How could you let another player take over the dungeon?" The unfortunate man's eye was swollen shut. A trickle of blood flowed from his nose. He begged for forgiveness. He promised to take care of whoever had taken over the dungeon. "Take care? The dungeon you couldn't handle was cleaned out by some rookie. How dare you say such a thing now? Can't you hear me? Secretary Kim." All this was said by a man whose face could not be seen behind the newspaper. He saw an advertisement in the newspaper that read as follows: "A single-story A+ rank dungeon has been found." The secretary understood without further ado. Meanwhile, the unfortunate man was led out of the office. The man kept begging for a last chance. The door closed and the office owner could no longer hear the screams. He was curious that somewhere there was a newcomer who had taken over the dungeon on his own. He asked the assistant if this guy really had a bad reputation in the guild. The woman answered in the affirmative. In the first dungeon, he abandoned his partners. There are also rumors that he kept all the bounty, though they're unconfirmed, the secretary said. Whether it's true or not, the problem is if his reputation in the guild is completely bad, it'll be hard to move on. It's not like he can't always walk around completely alone, the cabinet owner said. Suddenly, the silence of the study was cut through by the sound of a telephone. The man pressed the key and said, "Speak." The secretary said, A man named Kim Woo-jin has requested a meeting with you. The man was pleased that the object he was so interested in had come to the lion himself. This guy knows how to surprise. The results of the applications for the A+ rank single-story dungeon. 20 spots were allocated to the Phoenix Guild, although the seats were evenly distributed this time as well. 3 guilds, including Park En-won's guild, are currently vying for the 20 remaining spots, the man reported to his leader. The biggest problem is that even if they divide each faction into 6 seats, there will still be 2 seats left, the supervisor continued his report. The principal didn't understand why there were 2 seats left when there were 3 factions. His subordinate replied, "It's because they still haven't found a compromise." The man corrected his glasses and added, "Since this is an A+ rank dungeon, the chance of rare items falling out is higher. Moreover, if it's a single-story dungeon, the efficiency is also good." The leader replied, "They probably won't give in to each other. They are just brimming with confidence. Do the players even know what can happen in the dungeon?" The man loosened his tie. He was annoyed with all these participants. They were like a pain in the ass. "Is there anyone who isn't part of the faction but has applied for the 2 remaining spots?" the principal asked. The secretary replied that not yet. Sivavusius thought they were understandable. You never know what can happen when you enter a dungeon without a group. Suddenly, the phone buzzed, and on the other end was Park Yong-won. The director picked up the phone. His assistant was surprised at who was calling. After all, the situation was already quite complicated. The principal answered, judging from the expression on his face. What the caller was saying was not happy news. The next moment, he shouted out the name of the hero. The man could not believe his own eyes. The secretary's face turned red at what he heard. He wanted to know what was going on. The leader had already hung up the phone and explained, "Kim Woo-jin at least took the 2 remaining seats without the other factions knowing." The man said if it was that young man, then the rumors weren't lying. And since he always goes alone, the other groups wouldn't be particularly worried. The assistant asked in astonishment, wondering if the director meant to say that Kim Woo-jin had become part of Park Yun-won's faction. The leader replied that he didn't know yet. Perhaps they would only use him for the dungeon and then get rid of him. The secretary wanted to know what about the last place. After all, if so, wouldn't the other factions be in favor of that place? The leader relayed Park Yong-won's words. The latter promised to give in to the other factions if they put Kim Woo-jin in. In this way, they will simply mediate between the 2 remaining factions. The leader thinks Park is an incredible strategist. Just to think that he has a hidden ace called Kim Woo-jin. The man thought about how it was actually sometimes better to back down to get the most benefit later. In any case, he wanted to know what was wrong with the newcomer. What was the manner in which he had met Park Yun-won? Meanwhile, Park's secretary asked her master why he accepted Kim Woo-jin's application. It was fun to watch the way he made his way here to bring this thing. And it just so happened that there weren't much good guys left, the man explained. Park Eun-won was sure that he could manipulate the guy and then get rid of him at any time. It was easier to get rid of him as soon as he was no longer useful. 1 hour passed. The head of the Phoenix faction had time to familiarize himself with the diary of the deceased. He asked Kim if he knew what it was. The hero honestly replied that he had read this notebook. "Then why did you come here? Do you want to blackmail me and get money?" Puck inquired. With an unkind smile, he asked if the guy really thought blackmail would work in this case. Kim Woo-jin replied that he came here with a proposal, not blackmail. The hero explained that he heard about the A+ rank 1-story dungeon that everyone is talking about. He would like to go there. The head of the Phoenix faction laughed at the kid's words. He called him amused. "Do you realize what kind of dungeon this is? To tell me such a thing?" Park Eun-won inquired with anger in his voice. The young man replied that it was a dungeon that the Phoenix and Messiah guilds were competing for because there were a limited number of spots in this one. The master couldn't believe his own ears. How does a person who knows this want to go there? He threw the diary of his dead faction member on the table and called the hero crazy. Park Young-won didn't want to argue anymore. He accepted Kim Woo-jin's offer, but there was a but. After that meeting, a little later, the hero found himself at Kenbu University. He decided to attend a lecture that dealt with A+ level dungeons. The professor was narrating from the podium. "You probably know the contents of my report on the dungeon. There are at least more than 1,000 orcs in it. This dungeon has the 1st level. The task of the players who will be inside is to hunt down 1,000 orcs and an orc warrior. There are certain conditions for entry. People must have at least level 20. The maximum number of participants is 150 people. The hero tried to memorize every word because this information is very important for the future expedition. He stood behind the rest of the listeners, hiding his face with a hood. The professor continued to speak. He wasn't sure, but last time about 70 people died, almost half of the participants. Only the elite players of each guild had gathered in this hall. Considering that, it couldn't be said that all those deaths were just due to fighting monsters. I was forced to turn a blind eye due to the lack of evidence. The lecturer continued to narrate. Meanwhile, the hero thought, there was a high chance that the murders happened among the players. It would be a good opportunity to get rid of opponents and steal artifacts. The hero went towards the exit of the hall, but he had them to hear something else. There is something in this dungeon that all guilds are striving for. The reward for killing an orc warrior is a fang of orc kind. In the end, Prize C was given to the Messiah Guild for their huge contribution. The young man doesn't know anything, but thinking about it now, he realized it was very strange. Perhaps Lee Se-jun had already engaged in corruption at that time. Kim Woo-jin walked out of the university hall and found himself in an empty hallway. Even if Lee was behind this incident, there's a possibility that the Messiah Guild had nothing to do with it. That was the conclusion the hero came to. Perhaps the guild had sent spies into the rival organizations instead. He would be able to predict their next move based on the dead man's memories. At this moment, the portal to the A+ level dungeon had already opened and was waiting for its players. People were entering the dungeon one by one right now.